We stopped here. I don't know if everybody understands the ocean tides go in and they go out every day, twice a day. And usually they go in cycles. So for a 1 week period, there will be a whole bunch of lows, day after day, usually one hour later than the day before as it progresses. And at the middle of the week, it'll reach the lowest point, and then it'll start getting a little bit higher each day until it's basically high again. And you can find out the tide times going out by looking at tide charts on the internet or buying a tide book. And that's what we're here for today. It's actually quite a high tide right now, even though it's low. It's a high low tide. The tide will go way lower than this. The lower the number, the better it is for checking out the different sea life that's under the ocean. In this particular spot, we have a lot of sand down here towards the city. Very unstable conditions, and seaweed doesn't like that. It likes something that it can grab onto. You'll notice even just the sand right down here, there's not much life on it. So we're up on the rocks, and there's a few different species going on here. The green algae right now is liking fresh water, and this is a very common thing. When you are walking along the beach, you'll find this particular green algae is string lettuce. It's of the Ulva family, and it's very edible and very good. It's the least salty of the green algae because of all the freshwater influence. It tastes a lot like a land plant does. Very good. I've actually dried it. Now, if you're looking for the food value in this particular seaweed, you're going to want to look for the brightest green that you can find, because all seaweed goes into like seed stage, and then it starts to rot, and there's really nothing left of it. And so you'll notice on this one rock back here, it's quite light green, and there's a little bit of white. There's actually no life left in the white part of the seaweed. So it's finished its cycle, and it's no longer of any food value. Whereas the bright green, right in the water, that would be your food piece right there. Okay? The white, this part, there's bits of white, that's the sea lettuce gone bad. Alright? We'll see a couple of different kinds of the green algae today, and we'll talk about that. The most common one you see here right now is the fucus, the bladderwrack. That's the one with the little bubbles here. And another name is rockweed. It really likes rocks. It's very high on the tide zone, and it doesn't need fresh water. It'll grow in all different kinds of conditions. And it's the most medicinal seaweed of them all.
It is?
Yeah. It's the dandelion, what we call the dandelion of the seaweeds, because it has a full spectrum of vitamins and minerals, which most seaweeds don't have. They're high in one aspect or another, but they don't have the full spectrum like the fucus does. There's two varieties on our coast. This is the common one that you'll see in this part of the coast. If you go on the west side of the island, there's a very small one that you'll find. They both taste very similar, and I think nutrient-wise they're very similar too. It's a very unique seaweed in how it goes to seed, and I'm not a marine biologist, so I can't really explain it all, but it's very unique in that aspect too. Like, it propagates a lot differently than most seaweeds do. So if you want to harvest this one for food or medicine purpose, when you look at it, there's a bunch of different stages going on as well. The flat, bright is young growth. Now this has been hit by the sun a bit too, so it's dried out and a little bit blacker than it normally looks. But the flat, so this here are just stalks that have released the berry. It's gone. This is of no food value really, the stalk. It's these nice bright berries that you want. This is new growth. It's a nice light yellow. It's very firm and bright. This here is the old berries. This is last year's berries. They're flattened. They're going brown. They have no gel inside them anymore. In various stages of that old growth. Those are bitter, and they may have good medicinal use, but they're for eating they taste terrible. This young growth here is the berries that have not yet formed. So later on in the summer they'll puff up. and they'll grow into these nice bright berries. Now if you're harvesting this, you bring a pair of scissors down, and this way you won't kill the plant. You just pluck up a little bit like you're cutting hair, and you cut the berries off right on the stalk there. You're not detaching the holdfast from the rock. You leave it in place and it will continue to grow, and that way you won't destroy the plant.
Do you just eat gelatin?
You just eat the whole piece. Yeah, some people like it raw. I prefer it dried. My brother likes it raw. I find it kind of hard to take. It's a little bit slimy. But
what did you say the other name for it was? You said bladderwrack?
The Latin name is fucus.
Fucus?
Yeah, F-U-C-U-S. And the common names are bladderwrack, rockweed. Is it like
Creek?
rockweed?
Oh, rockweed.
Yeah, yeah. And it's very common. It's probably the most common species that we have high on the tide zone on our coast. So no shortage of it. It's a good one to know, because no matter where you go on the ocean, you'll find it somewhere nearby. The green algae are also very common, but there's a lot of variation in them. This one's called string lettuce because it's literally green strings.
Any toxicity? How much you can eat of that?
I've been reading about the toxicity of seaweeds. Good question. The main concern with toxicity is actually the water that remains on the seaweed when you harvest it. So if you say were to take this seaweed and bring it home to dry it, and it had contaminated seawater on it, that would be the toxin that you'd be getting in your system. The seaweed itself does not contain those toxins, but they will pick up certain heavy metals, like in extremely contaminated conditions. But things like red tide and those sorts of contaminants are, again, it's just the water that's actually on the seaweed. So you could rinse it at home. Fresh water does change the dynamic of the flavor, so it's nice if you can get it in clean seawater. And that's really the only place I'd recommend harvesting it, you know, for long food use. I wouldn't recommend harvesting it here. You know, I don't, nibbling a little bit here and there is not going to hurt you, but don't go bringing bags of it home and feasting on it. So we'll just, oh, go ahead.
Oh, it's just good to throw in your garden as well for fertilizer?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, but for that purpose, I would wait till the big storms come in, and you can kind of get the floats in that's up with the logs, and that way you're essentially picking up the compost. You're not taking out the plant that's established. One of the rules that we always teach kids when we go on the beach is whatever you do on the beach, you have to realize that it's a home for something. So if you move it or change it somehow, you try and leave it as close to how you found it when you do leave. I know my kids love looking under rocks, and there's a lot of things going on there, but it's nice to put it back, and because it is their home. And that's the same with seaweed. You always want to leave a little bit there, like on each plant. You don't take the whole thing, because snails and things they rely on that seaweed to have a home, have shelter. Otherwise they'll get eaten by the bigger fish.